Everyone at some point steps up to the edge of a cliff and gets paralyzed by fear, either metaphorically or in a very real sense.
How do you pronounce the name of the facility?
It's like you're steering a car. Steer.
Styrka.
Yeah, but don't say it like a redneck. Styrka.
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 Steer.
Styrka.
Styrka.
Styrka. For some, it's easier to watch others leap first. I know for me recently, it was taking the MoveNet Combatives course. We learned how to defend ourselves from people wanting to rob or even kill us. At one point, the instructor Vic wanted to show us just how hard it is to think after being in a high-stress situation. So we had to exercise until we were exhausted and then fight a punching bag all out for 1 minute while 3 people hit you on top of the head and on the body. You had the option to either get tased, maced, or even both. Never forget the yell of someone being tased, knowing you have to go next. So I sat and watched everyone go ahead of me, reluctant to take the leap. You step up to the edge of the cliff, your heart's pounding, and then you jump. Over the next few months, LocalAlists will be following the launch of Styrka. Hey guys, welcome to LocalAlists. This is Stephen Morales.
And James Pesch.
Now, we've been talking with local A-list personalities around Tulsa, but we want to try something new here and follow a local startup company in a mini-series over the next couple months.
Styrka.
This is going to be our first attempt at narrating, so there might be some kinks along the way, but that's just part of the process, much like starting a new business.
Yeah, I did not realize how much editing and extra work was going to go into this whenever you first introduced this idea to me. An hour and a half of editing for 2 minutes of content?
It's a lot.
This is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. So this is kind of a risk for us because much like a startup company, I mean, we could do all this work and it could flop. But we didn't take this on just kind of willy-nilly. We took this on because this story just happened to fall in our laps. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story of a couple taking the leap of starting a small business. So what is Styrka? You've heard the correct pronunciation of the word at this point, but what type of business is it? And more importantly, who's the couple creating it?
Mike Doolittle. I'm a personal trainer and owner and founder of Styrka.
And spell it?
Styrka.
That was Mike Doolittle, and we hope to get his wife Vanessa on the show at some point so we can get her side of all of this too. Mike, James, and myself all worked at a private training studio together for a handful of years before we all left and we went freelance. And ask any personal trainer, at some point they have that idea to open up their own facility. And for James and me, we actually did that, and that facility didn't even last a year. As a personal trainer, you end up at one point having one of these types of conversations.
And then it just was a casual conversation. Yeah, man, wouldn't it be nice if we had our own place and we could do our own thing? And it was sort of where he said, man, I would love to own my own place. I said, yeah, I've always thought about owning my own place too.
As two individuals who've actually created their own gym before, we can tell you that even if you have an amazing vision, that vision can still fail. There's a lot of risk and just a ton of things that go into creating a facility that most people don't think about. And it seems like lately, at least here in Tulsa, I mean, a gym is popping up on every corner. So gyms are harder to actually make profitable, especially in this market. And that's something Doolittle's fully aware of. Build with this. I mean, what's going to set this gym apart than any other gym?
Absolutely. Well, gyms are a dime a dozen. So I've thought a lot about how Styrka has to differentiate itself.
Mike's vision of what he thinks Styrka will be is ultimately what he thinks will set it apart from other gyms.
My first thought was that I wanted it to be an old school barbell club. it's always been the type of gyms that I prefer to work out in, and I've really never been attracted to this sort of sterility of large commercial gyms. I've always been attracted to the real strong community vibe that you get with the barbell club style facilities. And also, I'm just more of an old school style. I use the word athlete lightly, but an old school style athlete myself. I mean, that's the kind of training that I like to do. I like to do basic lifts. I don't need, miles of complicated machines and stuff like that. Just, give me barbells and dumbbells and the basics.
There are plenty of gyms just like Mike has described here in Tulsa, but Mike wants to create what he thinks will be unique to Styrka, to set it apart.
In my experience, you either have to go to a commercial gym and get a facility that's nice, that's clean, that has new equipment, or you have to go to a barbell club where equipment is broken and the place isn't very well maintained, the bathrooms are dirty, things like that. And so what I wanted to do is deliver that small, tight-knit community barbell club atmosphere, but do it with facilities that are actually nice. I mean, we're going to have the best equipment money can buy. We're going to have towel and water service. We have this kitchenette where people can congregate and cook their food. We have renovated showers. So we're trying to deliver a little bit more premium experience while still retaining that sort of old school barbell club feel.
Mike credits timing and luck as being one of the reasons why he pulled the trigger on actually launching his own gym, but the location he's actually picked is someplace that's already been a gym previously. That gym was Symmetry, and to my account it changed hands about 3 or 4 times and actually finally moved into a new location. That spot being open, Doolittle has moved in and wants to now create a gym, but he points out some of the faults with the previous gym that he wants to improve upon to make Styrka different.
Symmetry was an awesome gym. For whatever faults you could level at it, it was an amazing gym. But like you said, it was not the best, cared for place. So obviously those were things that I wanted to address, but also in opening this facility, I didn't want it to just be Symmetry.
Yeah.
So conceptually, I knew that the gym had to reflect where fitness trends are going.
Launching Styrka in a location that was previously a gym is a huge risk. I mean, just think of all the restaurants that have gone to the same location over and over again and have failed over and over again. Now that we've talked about what Doolittle's vision for Styrka is, I want to take a step back for just 1 second. There's a lot of planning that goes into creating a small business. A lot of things people don't realize at first. Since Doolittle will be in a physical location, he had to scout out different locations. He had to figure out what he could afford, the different price points. He had to create a business plan, a pro forma sheet. He had to take all this information down to a bank so he could get a loan. He has to look at equipment and figure out what he can afford there also. The building itself needed renovation, so Doolittle had to spend money on that also. As we've mentioned before, this is a joint venture with his wife Vanessa, but originally Mike had a business partner.
I had talked to him. We'd been talking for probably 5 or 6 weeks about doing this, and we'd been looking at locations. We'd talked to the property manager here, and I had talked to him and said, I'm going to go ahead and file the LLC, and I'm going to put you as 50% owner if that's okay with you. And he gives me the thumbs up. He says, yeah, go ahead. So I filed the LLC, and then about 30 minutes later, I got an email from him, and it's this long expository email saying, I'm really not sure about committing to 5 years being in Tulsa. He's a younger guy. He's in his mid-20s. And he says, it's also a lot of money. As we started sourcing stuff, the cost just kept climbing and climbing. And initially we thought we could get away with it pretty cheaply. And then when we started looking at the cost of all the renovations and the equipment, it's not an investment to take lightly.
Yeah, and I've done the same numbers too, and it's not cheap.
No, it's not. And so he decided that it was just a little bit too much money and a little bit too much commitment for him at his age.
Mike seems calm and relaxed, recounting the story, but I can only imagine what type of blow it had to his spirit as he files the LLC, and 30 minutes later, his business partner drops out. At this point, he's got to be thinking, man, where do I go from here? Mike recounts the story of waking up the next morning and explaining to his wife, Vanessa, that his business partner has just dropped out.
And so the next morning, I went and talked to my wife, and I said, well, Michael dropped out. His name is Michael Corey Fitness on YouTube. And she said, okay, well, what do we need to go forward? And I sort of rattled off, well, we need this and this and this. And she just looked at me and said, we can do this. And smiled, gave me a hug, and I said, all right, let's do it. Yeah. And from that moment we were in, and then literally the next day we signed the lease.
Mike says Vanessa creates a budget with projected expenses over the next 6 months to a year. This is where Mike and Vanessa figure out what they can afford for not only equipment, but flooring, cleaning supplies, towels, water, all those other things that go into a gym. It also helps them figure out what their membership rates are going to be. Doing that, do you guys have a price point right now for what it's going to cost for somebody to be a member?
Right now, we're looking at a $45 a month as our base, with a contract option that we are still considering. No sign-up fees, no cancellation fees, nothing like that. No BS. I'm very big on just being as straightforward as possible. Contract option, basically, you would just commit to a year and get a pretty hefty discount for doing so.
$45 is a high price point, especially considering you can go to 10 Gym or Planet Fitness for $10 a month, and they have more amenities than Styrka.
We're obviously not going to be able to compete with a big box gym in a lot of respects, and so we're not trying to.
Mike reflects on a similar situation when a big box gym moved down the street from Symmetry.
I remember when Gold's Gym over here at 67th and Memorial moved in, and I remember thinking that Symmetry was going to be in big trouble. I thought, man, this might be the end of Symmetry. Well, I remember actually very well around that time, memberships seemed to go up. I remember the gym being a lot busier in the months after Gold's arrived. And the reason that happened is because the guys at Symmetry knew their niche. And so they were able to cater to people in a specific way that Gold's Gym, being a large gym, just could not do. And they knew that there was an intrinsic value in that. There's also that level of community and the expertise of, being able to walk up to somebody who's a competitive lifter or bodybuilder or some other kind of athlete. Hey, how do you do that? And that's something that you can't really get at the big box gyms.
Mike and Vanessa have gone through the numbers and determined the number of members they need to make the gym profitable is roughly 100, and they need that before June.
So we have to be pretty conservative with membership estimates for the first year. But even doing what I think are very conservative estimates, will be profitable in the first year. We can be. And that was actually part of why it worked out so well, because our overhead here is so low that even with relatively weak membership, and by weak I mean less than Symmetry had in its sort of final throes before clearing out, we would still be able to make money.
Doolittle says this is a long time coming. He's worked in the industry for roughly 11 years, and he's worked at big and small gyms. He says he knows the industry and has always wanted to own his own facility, to take the next step in his career. He credits luck and timing being a small part, but mainly getting a lease deal he just couldn't pass up. I hear him quote Michael Jordan every now and then. I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I can't accept not trying. James and myself are watching this unfold as outsiders. We have the luxury of being realistic. James and me are rooting for Styrka, but at the same time are extremely nervous for Mike and Vanessa. Mike's calmness is making me personally even more nervous, but I can't say I wouldn't do the same thing as Mike if I were in his shoes. James and me took advantage of an opportunity we just couldn't pass up with our facility. Mike has everything lined up to launch his own facility. Mike has the personal experience in the industry, a loan, a location, equipment, and his wife as a business partner. So on paper, this move makes sense. But there is one big thing looming over this endeavor, and that's risk. What, a 5-year lease to this spot?
Yes, we did.
Does that kind of weigh on you guys? Have you assessed?
Is it slightly terrifying? Yes, it's slightly terrifying.
Next week on Local A-Lists, we're going to cover risks and what risks go into owning a small business. And we actually got to talk with Vanessa, so we're going to get her side of the story.